All right, everyone, they're doing it again. Vox cherry picking through polling, of course, and taking the one off Fox poll on impeachment. It was a snap poll and running with it. The irony is hilarious here. Here's Vox, which is, actually far left, not just establishmentarian, but, partisan left, generally speaking, liberal. Taking a poll from Fox News, of all places, which is cast off as the boogeyman of the left, or at least it used to be until alt media became more dominant, and assuming its veracity, let me issue the same warning that I always issue, whether it's pro-Trump, anti-Trump, seemingly, or whatever. Numbers cannot be trusted if you're talking about a single poll. When you're talking about one Fox News poll, Fox News has been all over the place with regards to polling anyway. With regards to, for instance, Trump's approval, you look back through the Fox News polls. One poll will have him 10 points beyond the aggregate. It'll be, similar to Rasmussen. Another one, it'll act like an MSNBC poll. It'll show him in the mid-30s. There's no consistency. This is why you use an aggregate. If you have enough inconsistencies that are directional, and you amalgamate those numbers together for long enough, you can get a trend line that shows you more or less the reality. You can't have an exact reality. I don't know, for instance, the exact number of people who approve of Trump, the exact number of people who disapprove, the exact number of people who don't give a fuck or whatever. I can't measure that. But I can look at 20 or 30 different polls over the last month, and I can give you a rough estimate of that actual total. I can never give you the real number with any accuracy. What Vox has done is it's getting itself a big dick about the idea of impeachment, because a Fox News poll said 51% of Americans support his impeachment and removal from office. Trump's, that is. Smaller share impeachment without removal, and then something like 40-some-odd% don't support impeachment. The odds of this actually being the number are close to zero. We then have to determine with logic and reason, since we don't have anything else to amalgamate it with, to aggregate it with, what's the likelihood? Do I believe, based on his approval and the current trajectory of things, that this number is real? No. This would insinuate that there are a significant number of people who approve of Donald Trump but want him removed from office. That doesn't make sense. I'm calling bullshit on the Fox News poll. I think it's at least 5 points off. I would say there's probably a significant proportion of people, probably over 40%, that support impeachment and removal. His disapproval number has consistently held in the 50s. That just makes sense. Just because you disapprove, by the way, doesn't mean you want him removed from office, but, the number would be closer to that. That being said, it makes no sense that approval would be higher than the number of people who don't want you removed from office. That makes no sense whatsoever. And it's a single poll. By the way, I'm not seeing Vox mention the methodology. How many people were polled? 10? How do we know? I need to at least know the sample size and the people that, was it registered voters? Likely voters? Was it just a random sampling of people who happened to be on their phones at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon? What was the methodology behind it? I really want to know, because Fox News' methodology hasn't led to great things within its polling accuracy. If YouGov released a poll that said this, I'd be, if I were a Trump superfan, more concerned. But Fox is a neocon network. They don't like Trump. The idea that Fox is gung-ho for Trump is hilarious. Every other day you've got some anchor on there telling Trump to shut up, which is fine. I mean, it's all's fair in legacy media, but it's not exactly an independent group. It's a multinational. It's a Fox News parent company is a multinational firm worth many billions of dollars, run by a bunch of rich people who have an axe to grind against anyone who recommends populism and nativism, because it prevents them from maximizing the revenue stream. So naturally, they're not huge fans of Trump. Their coverage has been more balanced, you could say, but in the past, they've been totally partisan. So long as the Republicans were all run by neocons like the McCains and Bushites, Fox News was overwhelmingly partisan in favor of Republicans. Less so now. Fox has been forced to become the fair corporate network simply because Trump isn't, like the other Republicans that have been in office. So they have to pretend that they don't like him, or rather pretend that they do, while being more balanced, because there's no other corporate media alternative for people to turn to. They can corner that market just by being kind of sort of fair. They realize all the over 60 viewers that aren't partisan Democrats are going to watch Fox, and they're cleaning up. They love the Trump presidency. Don't be surprised if they pull out all the stops to actually get him reelected just so they can continue to whine and complain and harass him. One poll does not an aggregate make. It's just like when we get approval polls. People say, like, Trump does this. He cherry picks polls. Rasmussen, usually. A poll will come out. It's way above the aggregate, shows him at 49-50% approval. That's not his approval level. That's bullshit. All other polls aside, they're all saying that he's at 43, 44 or something. You've got one poll in an entire aggregated month-long period that shows him at higher approval. He'll put that up. Democrats, meanwhile, will put up the ABC poll or the CNN poll or whatever showing him sub 40 or something. Oh, well, his approval has systemically collapsed. And each time this happens, I warn about it, and I'm always proven right because aggregates are always going to outperform single polls. Use RCP. I don't see a metric on there for impeachment yet. I could be, looking in the wrong place. I'll have to dig a little bit more deeply. As far as I know, though, there's no comprehensive polling. You don't even need to give me a full polling period. You don't even need to give me like a dozen different polls. Give me 3 polls. Give me 4 polls from somewhat reliable corporate networks. They're all going to be wrong, but they'll be wrong in different directions, and the average tends to give you the real number. Usually 5 is a pretty appropriate total. That's sort of the basic minimum. I can deal with 4, though, and 3 is like it's stretching it, but I can probably guesstimate the number maybe a little bit. But 1 poll, I have no direction. I have no idea which direction it's biased in. Maybe support for impeachment's higher. Maybe the Democrats' corporate propagandists finally cracked Trump over the head and sent him into a tailspin. But I can't tell that from this poll. In all likelihood, though, my gut instinct tells me support for impeachment, hard impeachment. That is removal, not just we're impeaching you as a censure move and then we're leaving it at that. Not like a Pelosi sort of deal, but an AOC deal. My guess is it's probably near 40 or thereabouts. That it would be basically people with Trump derangement syndrome want him gone. It's fairly straightforward. By the way, at any given time, I bet 30-40% of the population wanted Obama impeached, but they weren't exactly conducting polls on that. You think that the Tea Partiers didn't want him removed from office? They would have loved it. That was like, 25-30% of the country at one point probably would have fit into that category. By the way, let's say that 70% of the public wanted him impeached. Does it, strictly speaking, matter at all? No. The only way in which it can possibly matter, people can't impeach him unless they want to, vote out the whole government or something, go nuts and picket until he resigns. The only way it would matter is if the numbers get so high that the pro-impeachment forces grow so large that the country begins to break down, so to speak, and he gets forced to resign from office. They can't force him out of office, but it can put him in a position where it becomes ungovernable. You become a lame duck. You're like, well, the writing's on the wall, and you leave. By the way, I don't think they'd like a President Mike Pence very much. And President Nancy Pelosi, that would begin to look enough like a coup that I think it would probably cause some societal difficulties, so I don't think that'll happen. I don't think the Democrats have the wherewithal to force the issue that far. If I had to guess, I would say, and looking at Vox get their hopes up is funny, Trump may be impeached. I still give it considerably less than a 50-50 chance, but there's almost no chance of him being removed from office. At the speed things move, because it is such a partisan floor show, really the only victory the Democrats get from this whole fracas is that Biden, who's incapable of being elected, gets shoved down, making way for candidates that are maybe more adept, and that's not saying much, but for what it's worth. And then Trump loses a little bit of soft approval potentially over time. The problem is, I think they may have started the inquiry a little bit too early. And maybe they're trying to boil the frog, like they're going to do this for 4 or 5 months, then start a proceeding and drag that on through the election for a year, something along those lines. The problem is that the public's interest wanes very quickly in the news cycle system that we currently have. Because of the internet, after a half an hour, half the people have lost their fervor. They no longer care. Only partisans and ideologues are left really caring about political stories. You saw how fast Epstein dropped off the radar. This is one of the biggest stories of modern history. Arguably the biggest story of the decade in some respects, certainly within crime and punishment. Extremely Mysterious Circumstances reads like a spy thriller, and yet after a week nobody was talking about it anymore. That, by the way, that shouldn't be the case. People should still be demanding answers because we haven't gotten any. But 90% of the public didn't care after a week. The rest isn't enough to sustain it. It becomes a secondary issue. It becomes one that's mainly of import to people who focus on that kind of news preferentially. They get cast off successfully, therefore, by the mainstream as conspiracy theorists, even if what they're saying the mainstream was itself asking a week before. But you're not supposed to keep asking the same thing. You're obsessed and therefore wrong. It's basically what it boils down to. I don't think support for impeachment's beyond 50. I'd be surprised if it were much beyond 40. I have a feeling that the number of people who want him impeached is about even with the number of people who don't. The problem is impeachment comes in two forms within this poll specifically. Impeached, but you don't want him removed. You just want him basically slapped on the wrist and told to stop. Or actual full-on impeachment and removal, which is a bit more draconian. I think anyone with any strategic sense on the left would be crazy to support that anyway. What you'll do is you'll end up with near 100% Republican turnout in the election and get completely wasted and destroyed because, again, Trump has one ace up his sleeve left, even if removed from office. He has legendary amounts of support within the Republican Party. Absolutely legendary. He's beyond Ronald Reagan. If you were to take someone who, even within a partisan body, has that kind of hardened support base, has that near absolute hold over a political party, which encompasses a good, quarter to third of the voting electorate that's partisan anyway, that could cause major problems for the Democrats. They could get completely wasted. That's about all. Peace out.